Well, that's what they gave McNuggets the money for, because he tell us to keep it pushing. And we got a guest in the building, right?
We do. G. Bush, it's your man. Shannon A. Holmes, a sports attorney extraordinaire. What's up, Shannon? Thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man. So, it's so crazy. After, we had the viral moment on DeMar Hamlin, I was all over the place. I was getting a lot of different interview requests, and I just so happened to be on a podcast with Reverend Jesse Jackson, and Shannon was actually one of my counterparts that was on a panel, and he just so happens to run a firm in college or run a firm in Chicago, I believe, correct? And he is in charge
Texas,
of the Was that
in Dallas?
Dallas, okay. And he runs a firm that helps kids with NIL, and he specifically had so much to say that I just couldn't believe he was already doing some of these things in terms of being an advocate for people during NIL, and also talking and working with other professional athletes in terms of what they can do for insurance, what they can do as far as legal terms to get certain things done that the league is not stepping up for. And I just think he's a tremendous resource to the conversation we're having. So I reached out to him. You've got a bunch of books out there, a bunch of #1 sellers. So Shannon, tell us how you kind of got invited on that podcast, and some of the things that you and your firm are already doing, working with younger athletes to kind of protect their image and to project and get those guys where they need to go.
Well, first of all, Garrett, thanks, man. It's definitely a privilege when I was able to team up with you a few weeks ago on the podcast, Reverend Jackson and his daughter, Santita. I was like, Mom, I made it. I'm on with Garrett Bush. I'm here now. I'm arrived.
Stop it.
So man, this is just something I interned for a sports agent in college, and I'm from Beaumont, Texas, man. We're formerly known as the pro football capital of the world back in the 70s. So a lot of guys, older guys all the way back in the 70s, and it's kind of my peers made it to the NFL. So I've really just been a part of, understanding that business, that whole thing. And then, I had a colleague from the National Bar Association, C.K. Hoffler, an outstanding attorney down in Atlanta, trial attorney. She has 2 boys that are playing Division I football now. And so she heard me speaking at one of our conventions on NIL. So she reached out and had me on a couple of shows and talking about this and just really trying to educate the audience on what NIL is all about and some of the things that sports guys, athletes go through. And a lot of times, the consumer just doesn't realize, they hear about the contracts, but they don't realize what goes into that and how that looks. So that's kind of how this thing kind of evolved, man.
Shannon, I talked to, Brad Sellers. Obviously, he's one of the OGs on the panel. His daughter right now is playing major college basketball at the University of Maryland, has another daughter playing college basketball as well at the same time. And we talk about it all the time with NIL, and how it works is, there's a lot of people out there that can sell you dreams. There's a lot of people out there that tell you, hey, come on over here. Let's go we'll give you $3 million, $2 million here or there. But they don't realize that those people are backing out of these deals. Some of them don't have any paperwork. You don't have any guarantees. So what does it look like from your level where you got kids that are going to different places and expecting a certain outcome, but yet and still they're not getting it with NIL? And how are you guys helping kind of protect those parents and those families from that?
No, great question, great points, man. And hats off to Brad and his daughter, man. But the thing is, what we're trying to educate folks on, hey, get an attorney on your side. When you look at this thing, Garrett, the schools have attorneys representing them. All the corporate sponsors have attorneys representing them. And what we found was that there's no attorney representing the kids and the family. And let's just be quite transparent here. A lot of the kids are coming from backgrounds and environments where they've never dealt with attorneys other than for family members who are usually in some criminal situation. And so even I can tell you, as an African-American attorney, typically when I tell people I'm a lawyer, they say, oh, I hope I never need you. I'm like, wait, what about if you have a great business idea or you're running the company? And they say, oh, I never thought about that. So unfortunately, that's kind of the piece that, that's missing. So what we're trying to do and what we talk about and what we look at in the paperwork is, what are you agreeing to? How long are you agreeing? And what are you giving up for that? What we don't want to see is a young athlete give away his or her rights into perpetuity on a deal where they're endorsing the local grocery store chain. Then they look up 3, 4, 5 years later, they're playing in NFL, NBA, WNBA, et cetera. and they go to do another deal with a grocery store chain, and they learn that they've given away their rights into perpetuity to this other, local grocery store chain back in Nebraska someplace, right? So those are the type of things we're trying to make sure. I'm sure you guys heard about the recent deal where I think it's down in Florida where the kid was promised, I think I've heard anywhere from 9 to 13 million, and that doesn't seem to be happening now, and they're considering some legal action because they weren't able to come through and ratify that deal. So those are the kind of things, just basic contract deal terms that we want to make sure that the kids and their families understand what you're signing, why you're signing, and what that's going to look like going forward.
So Shannon, this is Brad Sellers here. So let me just ask this, because I've been in the game. I understand how the game works, right? But here, I'm a parent of one. Hell, I don't understand the NIL like that, right? Like, I understand representation. I understand cutting the deal. The problem is the kids are off here at the school. The school is, Maryland is better, right? But there's some schools out here, they're not telling these kids a thing about what to do, what the roles are, what they should be looking for. There's nobody representing the kid. And the kid at 18, 19 has no idea. They see a sum of money that is out here, in theory. Somebody's got to bring that deal in, right? So what should a student athlete out here be? I don't care if you're mid-major, whatever. What should that student athlete be looking for? What should that student athlete's family be looking for? Because you might not get it from the school.
Right. No, great point, Brad. And that's what I was saying. We've got to encourage and we've got to get the message across. They've got to get counsel, legal counsel involved. It's kind of like if you were being interrogated by the police, you say, hey, stop, wait, I want to get my lawyer. And then we've got to find a way to get them attorneys involved. The schools have got to make sure that they do the ethically correct thing and make sure that there's someone representing that athlete at the table. Because the schools have said, look, we can't work with you. We can't represent you on these deals. We need to know what deals you're doing, but we really can't be a part of that. And so we need to get the message across. And there are more and more attorneys starting to get involved. Unfortunately, there's no real database now, Brad, where we can just point to and say, hey, go here and get some help. But we're just trying. And again, thanks to Garrett and you guys for having me on, just trying to get this message across. Look, you got to stop, take a second, and try to get someone involved that can help you differentiate what you're doing on these deals. But you make a great point, Brad. Excellent point.
Shannon, what do you think NIL is going to look like 10 years from now? Because I covered college football for almost 15 years. I am all for this and athletes getting paid, but this feels like the wild, wild west in the early days of the internet when there was no structure and it feels like a free-for-all right now. Do you like it that way? Do you feel like we have to have some bumpers on this thing or some parameters to it? Or what do you think it's like now, and where do you think we'll be with this 5 to 10 years from now?
No, another good question that continues to come up. I think it's evolving. I think it's going to continue to evolve. I think the market is going to correct in some way from the corporate side. I think corporate dollars are going to say, wait a second, when we look at our measurables, we're not getting the biggest bang for our buck in this process. Yeah. I think what we see now, guys, is that really where the thing is, what they were trying to guard against, which they can't really guard against now, are these collectives, which are really just, the alum of a particular school pooling money together and saying, hey, we're not a part of the school, we're this collective group, and we're going to pay this guy or this guy. Or, in some instances, hey, if you're in the offensive line room or you play linebacker, you're in that room, you're entitled to $50,000 guaranteed, So that's the piece I think that some knew could happen, but they didn't see it happening like this. I think everyone imagined this thing just being where, the local car dealership, the local grocery store, and other businesses would be involved. We thought that kids would make money through their social media outlets. But then here comes these collectives, which really has put a spin on this thing that I think it's going to be hard to really control that piece.
Shannon, you said something just a minute ago, and I asked these people, on our panel, we talked about it all the time. I'm trying to figure out what the return on investment is, right? Like, say for instance, I'm sponsoring a guy like C.J. Stroud or something. I'm sponsoring those individuals, and I'm saying I'm gonna give him an NIL deal for $2 million. How are they recouping that money? Because I don't see C.J. Stroud doing videos. He's really not doing like, product placement or anything. And I don't really see him outside of football doing. How is it that they're coming up with this number that says this equates to this? I'm kind of confused on how they're going back to recoup these dollars and turning an investment from this.
No, that's exactly it. So I think that piece of the puzzle is still out there. I don't think there's enough measurables yet to really determine that. So what they're basing it on, you guys have probably seen it on a number of different places. They'll say, well, this person's NIL value is X.
Right.
You're starting to see that pop up in different forums. Well, that's really, I think, based on your impressions on social media. So that's Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. How many followers do you have? And then there's some formulas that the companies are using to say, hey, based on these followers, these amount of views, you have this amount of reach. And that's what their goal is, because that's really the medium that most of these companies are counting on for these athletes to advertise and demonstrate the products that they're attached to.
But Shannon, the problem is this here. This is the problem. The kids have no guidance, right? There's nobody looking out for the kid. You're in direct competition with the school because the school is sourcing out these same corporate clients for their own money, right? So the school don't really want you to cut into that money, right? So they'll sprinkle you some chips here and there so you get a little T-shirt deal and this keep a little money in your pocket while they're getting peeled off on the side. There's no real representation, because if I had real representation, we would define the terms of the contract. I'm going to give you this for this. There's nobody sitting there, and the 20 to 19-year-old kid, I'm looking at Cheyenne's on NIL deal. She come on, Dad, I got this T-shirt deal. What the hell kind of deal you got? A T-shirt deal. I'm like, what is this? Got my name on the back with a 0. I'm like, that ain't no money. I'm like, stop playing with me.
You don't shoot that girl's dreams down.
I'm like,
you dirty.
You get you some Chipotle with that. All right, don't worry about that. I'm like, but they want to do right. They just don't know how to do right. And the school not going to cut you all the way in because you cutting into the... I'll go back to Ohio State. Ohio State ain't cutting them people in with that money because they use that money to foster their own thing.
And I want to throw this right in because I know we got a little bit of time. Right, what you just said? So you're a lawyer, right? So if I was doing an NIL deal, name, image, likeness, everyone signs up to be a Nike school, Adidas school, Under Armour school. Is there anything prohibiting Adidas from saying, well, you know what, you are a Nike school, but I want an NIL deal with the quarterback and he gonna wear Adidas?
Yes, that is one of the rules. That's one of the few rules that they do have, is that you can't have a competing interest. That's Brad said. You can't have competing interest with the school. Right. That is correct.
So that is ironic to me. You don't really own your name, image, and likeness, because in that case, I didn't sign up to be a Nike school. I never said that I wanted to wear Nike.
But you signed to play at that school.
Right. See, so you signed. So you still signed to play at the school.
Indirectly.
So there's levels to it, right? You couldn't do it.
So Shannon, before we go here, I want to say this, right? Because I think you're going the right angle here. It's just like when I'm coming out of Ohio State in '86, right? I knew who the firms were that were representing players for professional contract negotiation. You knew where to kind of go. Mm-hmm. There's nobody there for this NIL. There are very few people. These kids don't know where to go. So they're susceptible to any and everybody coming their way, right? And anybody pitching an idea, because you thinking like, I got this little money, and I don't want to say it's little money, but in the scheme of things, it's little money. It's nothing, right? And so the more firms that are out there like Shannon's that are saying, hey, let me show you what this is about, because it's about educating the kid and the parent, right? So they know what expectations look like. The more that you continue to do that, Shannon, I think it's better off, because you got a whole bunch of kids out here getting swindled and coming up short, giving away something of value and getting very little value back in return.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and that's the goal. One of the things, if I could, one point of self-promotion here. So I did just write a book that, we reached bestseller status on last week. It's called Chief Executive Athlete, How to Run Your Sports Career Like a Fortune 500 Company. And the audience can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. You can download it on Kindle or buy the hard copy. But Brad, I talk about in the book a lot of these concepts, and just basic business concepts that those families can use to try to navigate this space until they can get to someone like myself or someone else who can really help guide them through this process. But we talk about a little bit of the contract stuff, branding, and just, how to conduct yourself like a chief executive versus just running up and down the field of the court, and not taking ownership of your brand and your career.
Shannon, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking your time today to come on and talk to us about it. This is definitely a topic that is, is permeating the industry, and we thank you for shedding light on it. We'll talk to you again soon.
Hey, man, thanks for having me, guys.
All right,
Appreciate
Shannon,
it.
thanks.
Shannon Holmes.
All right, guys.
We don't talk about it a lot.
People want to know, right? People want to know about that, right? Because you hear the term all the time, and you don't really understand what it really means. And then you think about the athlete. Student athlete doesn't understand what it means, not really.
Yeah.
They understand some of it, right?
The whole shift, I was talking to an executive a few months ago who said college is the new pros and high school is the new college.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole trickle down to this that we haven't even scratched the surface on in terms of NIL and how it's impacting kids at the high school level. And I'm telling you, I really think we are not, what it looks like today, we're not going to recognize it 5 years from now, which really isn't that far away. There is a dramatic groundswell happening here with high school sports and college and this whole thing. I don't know where it's going, but we are in evolving times right now with all this stuff.
True indeed. Let's switch gears a little bit and get to the Cavs.